Have you ever just stopped and wondered, how is it possible for some creatures to live in boiling hot springs while others are totally fine living in frozen ice? I mean, it's not some kind of superpower. It's actually something you have in common with every single living thing on this planet. Today, we're diving deep into metabolism, the incredible chemical engine that literally powers all of life.
No, really, think about it for a second. We find life in places that should be totally unlivable, right? We're talking bacteria in scorching volcanic vents, microbes in the deep freeze of the Arctic. So, how on earth is this possible? What is their secret to survival?
Well, the answer, believe it or not, comes down to one single word: metabolism. Yeah, this amazing chemical toolkit is what lets life adapt, survive, and basically conquer every single environment on our planet. So let's break down exactly how it works.
And when we talk about the ultimate survivors, we're really talking about microbes. These guys are the undisputed masters of metabolic adaptation. You'll find them everywhere, from the tops of mountains to the bottom of the ocean. And it's all because their internal chemistry is just unbelievably versatile. So if we really want to get how a microbe can happily live on sulfur deep in the ocean, while you and I need, oxygen in a sandwich, we have to look at the fundamental chemistry that's running the whole show inside every single cell.
And here's the cool part. It turns out, no matter how different all these organisms look on the outside, deep down, they're all following a kind of universal recipe. And that recipe has three core ingredients. And here they are. Every single living thing needs three things: a source of energy to get stuff done, electrons to move that energy around, and carbon to build itself. That's it. And how an organism gets those three things, that basically defines its entire way of life.
Okay, so metabolism. It's just the sum of all those chemical reactions happening inside a cell. But at its heart, it's really all about a series of what we call redox reactions. That's just short for reduction and oxidation. And all these reactions are about one thing: moving energy-carrying electrons from one molecule to another.
Now, trying to keep track of where all these electrons are zipping around can get a little tricky. But luckily, there's a fantastic little trick to remember it. Oil rig. Oxidation is loss of electrons. Reduction is gain of electrons. See? Oil rig. And the key thing is, whenever one molecule loses an electron, another one has to gain it. It's like this perfectly balanced chemical dance.
But here's the thing. Electrons can't just float around the cell on their own. They need, like, a taxi service. And that's exactly where molecules like NAD+ come into play. Just think of NAD+ as an empty taxi, ready for a fare. It picks up some high-energy electrons and, poof, it becomes NADH. Now it's a full taxi, carrying those precious electrons over to where the cell can cash them in for energy. All right, let's get personal. Let's look at the most familiar metabolic pathway of all. I'm talking about the one that you and I are using right this very second to power our bodies. We're talking about cellular respiration. It's pretty straightforward, right? We eat food, sugars, fats, proteins, and we breathe in oxygen. And the whole entire point of this is to systematically break down that food to unlock all the energy that's stored inside its chemical bonds. And if you look at the overall equation, it seems almost too simple. You start with glucose, sugar, and oxygen, and you end up with carbon dioxide, water, and, most importantly, a whole lot of energy. And that energy is captured in a special molecule called ATP. Think of ATP as the universal energy currency of the cell. It's the dollar bill that pays for pretty much everything. But don't let that simple equation fool you. It hides a beautifully complex and super efficient process. This isn't just one big explosion of energy. Oh no. It's much more elegant. It's like a highly organized factory assembly line. So this assembly line has four main stations. First up, glycolysis, where we split the sugar. Then, pyruvate oxidation, which is kind of like a prep station. After that, the Krebs cycle, which harvests a bunch of electrons. And finally, the big one, the electron transport chain. This is where the real energy payoff happens. And each stage perfectly sets up the one that comes next. Okay, so stage 1, glycolysis. The really crucial thing to get about this step is that it's universal. It happens in the cytoplasm of your cells, my cells, and pretty much every microbe on the planet. And what's wild is that it doesn't even need oxygen to work. This tells us it's an incredibly ancient pathway, a little hint at the shared ancestry of all life. All it does is split one glucose molecule into two smaller ones, and we get a small but quick profit of 2 ATP.
Okay, next up, if there's oxygen around, we move into the cell's powerhouse, the mitochondria. Now, those two smaller molecules from glycolysis can't just waltz into the next stage. They have to go through a quick prep step first. This gets them ready for the Krebs cycle. And the main job of the Krebs cycle isn't actually to make a ton of ATP directly, it only nets us about 2 more. No, its real job is to systematically strip out all the remaining high-energy electrons and load them onto our little taxicabs, NADH, and another one called FADH2. And this is why the Krebs cycle is so cool. It's like the central hub for all of metabolism. It's not just for sugar. Ate some protein or some fats? The breakdown products from those foods can be funneled right into the assembly line at this stage. It's incredibly flexible. And now it's time for the main event, the electron transport chain. This is where all those fully loaded taxis, the NADH and FADH2, show up. They drop off their high-energy electrons, and these electrons get passed down a line of proteins. It's kind of like a waterfall, or maybe a ball bouncing down a flight of stairs. With each little drop, a bit of energy is released. So what's that energy used for? Well, it's used to pump a bunch of protons across a membrane. This builds up a really powerful gradient, kind of like water building up behind a dam. It's a huge store of potential energy. And by the way, this whole process is called chemiosmosis. So at the very, very end of this chain, who's there to catch the electrons once they've given up all their energy? That's right, oxygen. That is its whole job here. It is the final electron acceptor. And this is so important because without it, the entire assembly line would just get clogged up and grind to a halt. That's why we have to breathe. Okay, so now the cell gets to cash in. All those protons that got pumped out, they want to rush back in, and they do, through this incredible molecular machine called ATP synthase. I mean, this thing is basically a tiny biological turbine. As the protons flow through, it spins like crazy. And that spinning motion, that mechanical energy, is used to just crank out massive, massive amounts of ATP. We're talking hundreds of them every single second. So let's look at the final numbers. The big payoff from just one single molecule of glucose. The first couple of stages gave us, a combined total of 4 ATP? Not bad. But the electron transport chain? Oh, it blows them away. It churns out around 32 ATP. This is where the vast, vast majority of our energy comes from. It really shows you just how powerful and efficient using oxygen is.
But what happens when there's no oxygen? I mean, what if you're a microbe stuck in the mud at the bottom of a lake? Or, heck, what about your own muscle cells when you're in the middle of a really intense workout? What happens when there's no oxygen waiting at the end of the line?
Well, life has a couple of clever workarounds. First, there's anaerobic respiration. This is where some microbes just use a different molecule at the end of the chain, something like nitrate or sulfate instead of oxygen. Then there's fermentation. This pathway skips the fancy electron transport chain altogether. Its main goal is just to recycle those electron taxis so that glycolysis can keep on chugging along, making a small but steady trickle of ATP. And you know fermentation well. It's the process that gives us things like the lactic acid in yogurt and kimchi, the ethanol in beer and wine, and even the stuff that makes the holes in Swiss cheese. Pretty cool, huh?
So, when we zoom back out, you can really start to see this incredible metabolic master plan at work. It's this beautiful system, a set of core rules, but with just endless variations and tweaks.
And that right there, that incredible metabolic flexibility, that's the real secret. It's the reason life has managed to conquer pretty much every single corner of our planet. From the bottom of the ocean to the top of the mountains, life finds a way. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other strange, wonderful, and totally bizarre metabolic secrets are still out there, just waiting for us to discover?